Hello and welcome to the free CCNA CyberOps instructor training brought to you by the Open University Cisco Academy Support Center in association with the Institute of Coding. And this is video session number 3 this evening. We're looking at Chapter 6, Principles of Network Security. It is the 28th of October 2019. Oh yes. Hello gentlemen, hello ladies, hello everybody. It's about the time of day when we get back to we get to number 3 and it's like, wow. I don't know what it's like for you guys, but it's like, whoa. I need to go and stick my head in a big bucket of icy cold water. Yeah. Oh, Carl. Yeah. Yeah. The VLAN chapter. Very interesting chapter. That. Had to go through a few things relatively quick there. Decided to do a little bit more packet tracer on that one, so I hope that went down well. Yeah. Let's rock and roll. It is Principles of Network Security. It's not a massive chapter, believe it or not, this one, because it goes a lot deeper into some of these things in later chapters. But well, it's getting to be a bit late in the day now. It's about 2 minutes past, according to my super accurate Raspberry Pi plutonium powered clock. So let's get into this thing, as they say. Right. So. First things first, we need to look at what a threat is, what a vulnerability is, and what a risk is. Now, some of these are pretty straightforward definitions. We don't have to go too deep into this. A threat is the potential danger to an asset. Now, this could be data, or it could be the network infrastructure itself, potentially. Obviously, bear in mind that in the vast majority of cases, the data that is present in your organization or on your network is vastly more expensive, or more it's worth much more monetarily than the actual network infrastructure itself. Yes, your servers and your routers and your switches might be expensive, but the information that's actually being stored and that traverses those is, wow, vastly more expensive. Vastly more valuable. Okay, so a threat is the potential danger to an asset, such as data or the network. Vulnerability, or also known as an attack surface, this is a weakness in the system or in its design that could be exploited by a threat. The attack surface, this describes the different points where the attacker could actually gain access to the system or get to the data. So for instance, an operating system without security patches on, unfortunately more common than most. An exploit, this is the actual mechanism that's being used in order to leverage the vulnerability and to compromise the asset. Now if it's a remote exploit, it works over the network. If it's a local exploit, then the threat actor has either user or, much worse still, administrative access to the end system. Now a risk is simply the likelihood that a threat will exploit a vulnerability of an asset in order to result in some bad thing happening, some undesirable consequence. So we want to minimize risk. We need to minimize risk by minimizing any vulnerabilities on our systems, by minimizing the attack surface. This way, the threats are minimized, the chances that any particular vulnerability could be exploited are minimized. Okay, now, there was an interesting term there. It was the term threat actor. So if we look at who is attacking our network, and by the way, if you see anybody walking around your building who looks anything like the guy in this slide, sort of black silhouetted, black hat on, dodgy sunglasses, get them arrested straight away. We have terms such as white hat hacker. Now a white hat hacker is a good guy. Okay, it's like in the old cowboy movies. Anybody who wears a white hat is a good guy. Anybody who wears a black hat, you don't want to go anywhere near them. A white hat hacker is an ethical hacker, and they can make use of their extensive programming skills for good ethical and legal purposes. Because in reality, the term hacker, if you go back far enough, all that meant was it was somebody who was extremely good at what they did. It was not really a derogatory term initially. If you were an extremely good programmer, people would say, "Wow, you're a damn good hacker," and you wouldn't actually be offended by this. It just meant you were a very good programmer. So a white hat hacker is literally somebody who can make use of their programming skills, their networking skills, their skills with operating systems for good ethical and legal purposes. So for instance, performing penetration tests in order to discover vulnerabilities and then reporting those to the developers before there's a chance for those vulnerabilities to be exploited. A grey hat hacker, this is somebody who commits crimes and does unethical things, but it's not for personal gain or to cause damage. So they might compromise a network or disclose, and then once they've compromised that network, they may then disclose the problem so the organization can fix the problem. Okay, so this is literally a bit of a grey area. And then you've got the bad guys. You've got the black hat hackers. Now these are unethical criminals. They will violate the security for personal gain or for malicious reasons. In some cases, they'll do it just because they want to see if they can do it, and they don't really care how much damage they do in the process, or sometimes they don't understand how much damage they're going to do. Okay, so the term threat actor, this is a term that is used to describe either grey hats or black hats, because of course a white hat is not really a threat. A white hat should be potentially a benefit, because they're going to try to work out what the vulnerabilities are and either report them to the organization or to the developers of the software or the hardware in order to make sure they're fixed before a grey hat or a black hat can exploit them. So let's have a little look at the evolution of our threat actors. So, famous term here, script kiddies. A script kiddie is an inexperienced hacker, and they will run existing tools and exploits and cause harm, and typically not for profit. It's just something to do. Rainy day, there's nothing much on the television, we'll get the computer out, we'll see if there's any decent tools that somebody's come up with that make attacking a network super easy. Next, click, click, finish, and off they go. Let's see what we can do. Again, not realizing the significant damage that they can do in the process. It's in some ways very unfortunate that some of our applications, and in fact many of the applications that are found on distributions such as Kali, can be exploited by script kiddies. People with very little experience, very little understanding of the technology, just using extremely easy to use but very powerful tools to cause all kinds of damage, not realizing often just how serious the damage is that they are causing. State-sponsored. Now a state-sponsored could be a white hat or a black hat who steals government secrets, government intelligence, and sabotages networks. Now obviously, in the case of state-sponsored, whether you're a white hat or a black hat probably depends on whose side you're on. But there is a famous situation with the Stuxnet virus, where there was an issue with uranium enrichment centrifuges being used in Iran, and a virus or a worm was introduced by means of USB sticks. It went across to the Windows computers inside the nuclear facility. It wasn't targeting the Windows computers, it was just using those as a stepping stone it was targeting the System 7 software on the programmable logic controllers that controlled the speed and operation of these huge centrifuges, which separated uranium from into highly enriched bomb capable or nuclear power station capable material, and they just basically sped up and slowed down these centrifuges again and again and again multiple times until they destroyed the things. State-sponsored would target foreign governments, potentially terrorist groups and corporations. We've got cyber criminals. These are the ones that most people think of. When you think the word hacker, you're generally thinking of a cyber criminal. So these are black hat activists who are trying to steal money from consumers and businesses, typically via the use of something like, for instance, ransomware, where we can put malicious software on a system. What it will do is it will take all of the data on that server. It will put that data into a folder. It will encrypt the folder with extremely strong encryption, something like AES, Advanced Encryption Standard Encryption. And then what they'll do is they'll basically hold you to ransom. They'll delete all of the information securely, and if you want your data back, then you have to pay us a certain amount of money, normally via Bitcoin, bounced halfway around the world a dozen times. Very big business. Then you've got hacktivists. Now, hacktivists are not really the sort of people who are trying to steal vast amounts of money or anything like that. These are grey hats, and they will protest for various political or social reasons. For instance, the anonymous to a certain extent could be classified as hacktivists. They'll sometimes post articles or videos to leak sensitive information, your WikiLeaks, that type of thing. We've also got an interesting category there where we've got vulnerability broker. Now, a vulnerability broker discovers exploits and then reports them to vendors, often for prizes or rewards, monetary generally. Okay, so who is attacking our network? The old cyber criminals. These are the most well known. These are your money motivated threat actors. They will buy, they will sell, and they will trade exploits. They literally get hold of exploits and use them as commodities. I've got an exploit which can go up against this particular software on this particular system. It's never been used before. It might be a 0-day exploit, so we know damn well that there's not really going to be any defense against it, at least the first time it was used. And these are used to steal private information or intellectual property. They're going to steal from the consumers, small businesses, as well as large businesses and industries, and it's all about making money. Okay, so cybersecurity tasks. What do we need to do? We need to develop good cybersecurity awareness. We need to make sure that we report cybercrime to the authorities. And of course there are many more cybercrime related organisations now appearing all of the time. The vast sums of money which are diverted either into black hats bank accounts or sometimes into criminal organisations, terrorist organisations through the use of cybercrime has meant that cybercrime is being taken extremely seriously now by governments all across the world. We need to be aware of any potential threats in emails, the web. We need to guard important information from theft. So our organisations must be proactive. They must take action and protect their assets, their users and their customers. We need to make sure that we develop cybersecurity tasks, and we need to implement those tasks on a reoccurring basis. What you have to remember with cybersecurity is it's a never-ending task. As soon as you get one step ahead, the cyber criminals will get 2 steps ahead. And it continues again and again and again. It's not a static thing. Now, each attack has unique identifiable attributes, signatures. These are known as cyber threat indicators, or simply indicators. Now obviously this course is more related to how things work in the United States, but the US Department of Homeland Security and the United States Computer Emergency Readiness Team, or CERT, makes use of an automated indicator sharing system, or AIS system, and this enables the sharing of verified attack indicators with public and private organizations. Now here's a worrying trend. Of course, attackers need to make use of tools in order to exploit a vulnerability, and the sophistication of the attack tools and the technical knowledge that's required to conduct the attacks has changed drastically since 1985. Back in 1985, the tools were not particularly sophisticated, and it took somebody with a considerable technical knowledge to actually use those tools in an effective manner. Nowadays it's completely the opposite way around. The tools are extremely sophisticated, and your script kiddies with very limited technical knowledge can actually cause massive damage with these tools. Okay, so if we have a little look at the evolution of some of the security tools, if we look at common penetration testing tools, for instance, we have password crackers. So these are used to guess passwords and gain access to systems. We did actually have a look at one in a previous video where we run a piece of software known as John the Ripper. And what John the Ripper did was it cracked local passwords. It basically accessed the Windows Security Account Manager database, SAM file, which is locked by the Windows operating system while it's running. So what we do is we boot the computer on an alternate operating system such as Linux. We mount the hard drive. We can access the SAM file. Inside the SAM file are the hashes, the NT and LAN manager hashes. And we can make use of the fact that the algorithms are well known to run either a dictionary attack, which uses a dictionary of words, or slightly modified words where we perhaps use numbers for certain letters and things like that, or tap numbers on the start or the end of words. Or it could even drop right back to a brute force attack where it uses every possible combination of uppercase, lowercase, numbers and special characters in order to run through that algorithm, look at the resulting hash, and if the resulting hash matches the hash in the Security Accounts Manager database, then that was your password. So these password crackers range in sophistication. John the Ripper was relatively good back in the old days against Windows XP and Windows 7, but it's no use whatsoever against Windows 10 now. However, there are many other ways around things. Sorry, I meant Offcrack was very good against Windows XP and Windows 7, but it's no good against Windows 10. John the Ripper is generally used against Linux systems. Wireless hacking tools, these are used to hack into wireless networks, so we're looking at things like, for instance, AirCrack, AirCrack NG. Network scanning tools used to probe networks, servers and hosts for open ports. Of course, the most well-known of those would be Nmap. Packet crafting tools, which are used to probe and test firewalls' robustness by creating specially crafted packets. Packet sniffers, incredibly useful for legitimate purposes as well as non-legitimate purposes. A packet sniffer, or protocol analyzer to use another phrase, can capture and analyze packets within traditional Ethernet LANs and wireless LANs. So we're looking at Wireshark, rootkit detectors, fuzzers, forensic tools, debuggers, and the list goes on. Common categories of network attacks. Simple things like, for instance, eavesdropping. We could use eavesdropping potentially with something as simple as Wireshark to capture and listen to network traffic. It is possible with Wireshark to capture voice over IP traffic, and if it's using a codec or coder decoder such as G711, ULAW or ALAW, or even G729 if you've got the decoder, plugin, you can actually capture the voice over IP packets and extract the audio information and rebuild the voice over IP communication from the captured packets. And I've actually done this. I've done this when I was running a foundation degree many years ago at a local college in Luton. On a second year foundation degree students, we used to get them to set up a voice over IP server, and then we would get them to do a attack on a switch known as a man-in-the-middle attack, and they would capture the voice over IP packets using Wireshark, and then they would use Wireshark to rebuild the voice over IP packets into the telephone conversation. You could literally hear the telephone conversation that was being said both sides. Absolutely remarkable. IP address spoofing. Yep, this is quite a useful technique. We can construct an IP packet that appears to originate from a valid address inside the corporate intranet, whereas it's not. Denial of service. Of course, a denial of service is slightly unusual because a denial of service attack is not designed to steal anything. It's simply there to prevent a normal use of the computer or the network by valid users. And even more dangerous, a distributed denial of service attack, which makes use of command and control servers and zombie code and botnets to distribute the attack across thousands, potentially tens or even hundreds of thousands of computers, and to leverage all of those computers attacking a single server at the same time, trying to knock it off the network. The man-in-the-middle attack. The attacker positions themselves between the source and the destination. This would normally be between a server, for instance, and a default gateway in order to monitor, capture and control the communication. The software that we used for the man-in-the-middle attack was something called Ettercap, or I think it's now known as Ettercap NG. There's compromised key, there's sniffer attacks, there's all kinds of network attacks. Moving on to malware. Of course, malware is short for malicious software, and this is designed to damage, distribute, steal or inflict illegitimate action on data and host networks. So now we're looking at things like, for instance, viruses, worms, trojans, rootkits, spyware, ransomware. A virus. This is a type of malware that propagates by inserting a copy of itself into another program. It spreads from one computer to another. It can be spread by USB devices, CDs, DVDs, network shares, or via email. And the virus can lay dormant and then activate at a specific time and date. However, a virus requires human action in order to insert the malicious code into another program. So viruses in this regard are not as dangerous as, for instance, worms, because a worm can actually propagate all by itself. The famous Trojan horse. This is malicious code that is designed to look like a legitimate piece of software. For instance, it could be a screensaver. A nice little screensaver with some lovely little kittens on it, or perhaps it looks like a aquarium with fish running around. You think to yourself, oh, I'll put that screensaver on my system, not realizing that yes, it is a screensaver and it functions perfectly well as a screensaver to lull you into a false sense of security. However, what it's also doing, running in the background, is it's opening up ports on your computer to allow for remote access and allow people not only to remotely access your computer, but to also run code, possibly with administrator privileges, possibly even installing keyloggers so as they can log every keystroke that you take and send it back. Trojan horses are quite often found attached to online games. Now they are a non-replicating type of malware, and what they do is they can exploit the privileges of the user that runs the malware. Particularly dangerous if it happens to be a network administrator who runs it, but obviously most network administrators should be well aware of the dangers of installing software directly from the internet where you're not 100% certain of the validity of that software. Now, Trojan horse could cause immediate damage or it could actually just sit in the background, providing remote access to a system. In other words, access through a back door. It could run a piece of software like, for instance, Netcat, which just opens a listening port on your computer. Trojan Horse classification, we have the remote access Trojan Horse, so this enables unauthorized remote access. We have the data sending Trojan Horse, so this provides a threat actor with sensitive data such as passwords. It could be logging your keystrokes and then sending them back to base. We have the destructive Trojan Horse, which corrupts and deletes files. There's a proxy Trojan Horse. This will make use of the victim's computer as a source device to launch attacks and perform illegal activities. The FTP Trojan Horse. This will enable unauthorized file transfer services. Security Software Disabler Trojan Horse. This is a nice one. This stops antivirus problems or firewalls from functioning correctly. And then of course we have the Denial of Service Trojan Horse, which can slow or completely halt network activity. And then you've got the worms. Now a worm is generally much more dangerous than a virus. A worm is capable of executing arbitrary code, and it can install itself into the memory of the infected device. The most dangerous thing is it can automatically replicate itself, and it can spread across the network from system to system extremely quickly. If you look at the graphic on this particular slide, you can see the code red worm. I can actually remember the code red worm when I was at college. We had code red, and we also had one called Nimda. I think Nimda actually did more damage. Worryingly, I won't say which college it was, but they decided that they would get the worm off of all of the desktop machines, not realizing that it was on the Active Directory server. So when all the desktop machines logged back on again, they just pulled the worm straight back onto them. But anyway, the initial code red worm infection, 658 servers, including one by the looks of things in Alice Springs, Australia. Within 19 hours, infected 300,000 servers. Wow. Okay, so the components of a worm attack will include the exploiting vulnerability, delivering a malicious payload, and self-propagation. Now, whilst a virus requires a host program to run, worms are significantly more dangerous because they can run by themselves. Okay, so here's a worm attack broken down into the three main components. We have an enabling vulnerability. So the worm installs itself, making use of an exploit mechanism, such as, for instance, an email attachment or an executable file, possibly a Trojan horse or a vulnerable system. We then have the propagation mechanism, critical for the propagation and spreading of the worm code. So after gaining access to the device, the worm replicates itself and locates new targets. In the case of email worms, it can actually trawl through your contacts list and send emails as though they were coming from you to all the contacts in your contacts list. And then we have the payload. And this is the malicious code that results in some action. If this is a payload which is generally used, for instance, to create a backdoor. This will allow the threat actor access to the infected host or to create a denial of service attack. Ransomware. I have a very close friend who runs a little networking company, and he's often telling me about various people. He won't quite rightly say the names of these people, but it's amazing how many times he'll turn around and say, "Oh, Kev, had a bit of a nasty situation. Old so-and-so, so-and-so, ransomware." Yeah, well, you can see what it does. It's malware that accesses the infected computer or system, puts all of the files puts all the data into a folder, encrypts the folder, and then the cyber criminals will demand a payment to release the computer system. The main vectors for ransomware are via email or malicious advertising, and social engineering is also used. So for instance, the cyber criminal may identify themselves as a security technician, calling homes and persuade the users to connect to a specific website that will then automatically download the ransomware into the user's computer. Very, very nasty indeed. And there are many other types of malware as well. We've got spyware, used to gather information. We've got adware, which typically displays extremely annoying pop-ups in order to generate revenue for the author. Scareware. This is scam software that makes use of social engineering in order to shock or induce anxiety. This is creating the perception of a threat. Often there is no threat, but it creates a perception of the threat, generally directed at unsuspected users, and attempts to persuade the user to infect the computer by taking action to address a bogus threat. So taking action to address a bogus threat ends up causing you to actually connect to a website, for instance, and infect the computer. A phishing attack attempts to convince the people to divulge sensitive information, so bank account details, PIN numbers, etc. These are sometimes combined with a DNS redirection attack. So for instance, you may have a situation where you have a spoof DNS server which redirects you to a website that just happens to look like your bank, and it looks very, very much like your bank, in fact. However, when you're tapping your information in, it's simply recording it. Rootkits. Rootkits can be installed on a compromised system. After it's installed, it can continue to hide its intrusion and then provide privileged access. Behavior. Often, computers that are infected with malware will exhibit one or more types of the following behavior. So, the appearance of strange files, programs, or desktop icons. Yeah, this is a typical situation where you may well have a virus or a worm on your system. Antivirus or firewall programs, turning off or reconfiguring settings. Very scary, really, isn't it? Computer screen is freezing or the system is crashing. Emails are spontaneously being sent without your knowledge to your contact list. Oh yes, yeah, that'll be a worm. That'll be a worm that's got into your system, an email worm, and it's trawling through your contact list and emailing all your friends to spread its payload. Files that have been modified or deleted. Another key indicator is increased CPU or memory utilization. So it's always a good idea to keep a little eye on your task manager, or if you're running a Linux system, to run top every now and then. Problems accessing networks, a slow computer or web browser speeds, unknown processes or services running. Again, there are tools which you can use to make sure that you can check very easily whether there are any unknown processes or services running. They're built into the operating systems. Depending on which operating system you're using, it's different tools. It's a good idea every now and then to run a netstat just to check to see what listening ports are open on your computer. Unknown TCP or UDP ports open, so netstat will indicate that. Connections made to hosts on the internet without user intervention. And then the catch-all at the bottom there, strange computer behavior. Okay, if we look at types of network attacks, and this again is a bit of a 1,000-foot overview, but got three main categories here. We've got reconnaissance attacks, access attacks, and denial of service attacks. A little bit like war, really. You're not going to go off and attack somebody unless you know their capabilities. So one of the first things we like to do is we like to do a reconnaissance attack. This would normally be done by something like, for instance, Nmap, or possibly Whois, or NSLOOKUP, or DIG. We can have a little look at those in a moment. Access attacks, denial of service attacks. Access attack is literally trying to gain access to the system, more often than not as a normal user, and then you'll do some form of privilege escalation to try to get administrative or root access. And the denial of service attack, of course, isn't trying to access anything or steal anything. It's just trying to deny that service from operating, knock that web server or email server off of the network. Okay, so looking at the first one, reconnaissance attack, also known as information gathering. These are attacks performed to unauthorized discovery or mapping of systems. Nmap, without the slightest shadow of a doubt. Nmap is one of the most well-known reconnaissance tools. However, there are many others. We could do something as simple as a Google search. It's absolutely remarkable what you can find out if you're very good with Google searches. There's a lot of public information out there. We could make use of dig, NSLOOKUP, or whois. In fact, what we could do is we could actually have a very quick look at that now. Just to break things up so as we're not looking at too much PowerPoint, what I'll do is we'll switch across to Kali, our old favourite, Kali. I'm running this in a virtual machine. We'll log into Kali, root and Tor. We'll open up a terminal window. We'll just have a little play in there for a moment, see what we can do. Okay, first things first, have I got an IP address? I probably should have. Yes, I have, 192.168.50.58. Looking good. Do I have a default route out? Yes, I do. That's pointing away to my default gateway. That's all looking good. Okay, so what can we do first? Let's do a whois. We'll do a quick whois. Who can we whois? Let's whois Google, just to start off with. We'll do a whois of google.com. So whois will actually query a whois server on port 43 TCP, and we can get some information regarding google.com. Okay, we can see Google's name servers. Registrar expiration dates. That doesn't surprise me particularly. Right up to the 9th, 2028. Have a long expiration date for Google. We can see a lot of legal information here as well. There is a way of actually doing it where you can actually lose all of the legal information. Just trying to remember how you do that now. I think it is -H. That'll hide the... I put a space in there, my fault. That's it, no space between the hyphen and the H. Yeah, that's better. Okay, what that'll do is that'll lose the legal information. Still a lot of stuff there, but it gets rid of the legal section. So it's just showing more useful information now. Google, update dates, creation dates, domain statuses, domain name, registrar abuse complaints at markmonitor.com. Yeah, lots of stuff. Tech country, US. There's their name servers there. Yeah, that's a reasonable amount of use. Tell you what, I'm going to do a whois. My good friend Rob, he runs a lovely little networking company called Yellowstone. Superb little company. General networking, PC maintenance, even voice. Let's do a quick whois of Rob's company. There we go. Domain name yellowstone.co.uk. Registered on. See, if I want specific information too, I can grep for certain specific information in their output. So for instance, we could grep for registered date. Now I have to backspace, I have to do a backslash to escape the space, so you can't just put registered space date, you've got to put the backslash in there to escape the space. That worked well then, didn't it? Because it's not registered date, it's registered on. Oh, right, yeah, am I spelling registered wrong or something? Registered on. That looks alright to me. I see. The O's are lowercase. Grep is case sensitive. There we go. Look at that. Yeah, grep is case sensitive, so you've got to bear that one in mind. So I can see registered on there. I mean, you can do all kinds of crazy things. In fact, what I could do, just to show you how crazy the Linux command line is, cut with a delimiter of the colon, and we'll look at field 1. That shows us the registered on, so that's the first field, and there's a delimiter being the colon. So you can imagine if I use field 2, I should just see this part. So let's try that, field 2. There you go. So it is absolutely crazy what you can do with some of this software. I mean, that's not necessarily telling us masses of information, but what we could do is we could use dig. So if we dig Rob's website, yellowstone.co.uk, you'll notice what dig's going to do is it's going to go off and query my DNS server, which is at 8.8.8.8, Google's DNS server in other words, and it's going to ask a question. The question is, I want to have the IP address of yellowstone.co.uk. It's going to basically ask for what's known as the A record, the address record, and it's saying yellowstone.co.uk lives at this particular IP address here, 188.65.185.201. So if I copy that, open up a web browser and paste that in, there you go, straight through. That's a nice little website there, Rob. I think he's actually modified that slightly. Looks nice and clean. Excellent. Okay. So there's our dig, and of course with dig you can do similar sort of things as well. So for instance, if I'm only interested in that IP address, because that's something that you quite often are interested in, just the IP address, you can actually put, I believe it's plus short. There you go, and it will just give you that IP address instead of all the other output. Nmap. We can do a port scan, where we can scan all of the machines on the local network, or any other network for that matter, though I'm just going to scan my own local network because it would be a bit naughty to scan any other networks on a video. So -SP gives me a simple port scan showing all the systems that are up. There's the B-Sky B box downstairs connected to the television. There's this big laptop. There's my printer, Seiko Epson. In fact, what we'll do is we'll zero in on that Seiko Epson printer, which is that IP address there. We'll do an nmap -SV minus capital O on that particular address. And what that is, SV is a version scan and -O is an operating system fingerprint. So what it'll do is it will actually try to work out the versions of the software on this system, the ports that are open and the operating system that's running. It is a printer, and let's see, port 8 is open. Universal plug and play. My goodness me, they've actually got universal plug and play operating on here. Remember, if you were watching the IT Essentials session earlier today, that's something you don't really want to have switched on. Jet Direct. Yeah. Okay. Look at that. Your Epson printer is running Linux. Yeah. Linux kernel 2.6, not the newest kernel. Okay. So with this information, armed with this information, I could potentially see if there is a vulnerability related to this particular system, which I could potentially exploit. Yeah. Okay. Anyway, let's just try something a minute. I'm just a little intrigued now. I probably shouldn't do this, but can I? Actually, let's not do that. Let's there's another way of doing this. Host. I'm not sure this is going to work. does work. Excellent. So host's a nice command as well. So that's returned basically that same IP address for the web server, but it also says that email is being handled by spamwall at Yep, it's kind of neat. Okay. In fact, just a matter of interest, what would happen if I host Google's DNS server? Ah, there you go. It says this is Google's DNS server. Yeah. Cloudflare's DNS server 1.1.1.1. Oh my goodness, that's amazing. Let's do a whois on that, because I'm sure that's Cloudflare 1.1.1.1. See what I mean? Reconnaissance attacks can be a bit too much fun sometimes, trying to work out what's what. Ah, Brisbane. Okay, and the phone numbers. Oh my goodness, look at that. Yeah, yeah. See if we can get all the phone numbers. So we'll grep for phone. Okay. And if I'm only interested in the phone numbers, I'm not interested in the other part, we can, let's see if I can remember how I did that now. Cut -d, and the delimiter is semicolon, and I want field 2. There you go. Yeah, anyway, reconnaissance attacks, all the fun. Once we've done a reconnaissance attack, an access attack is designed to exploit vulnerabilities. So we're talking about vulnerabilities in things like authentication services, FTP services, web services, in order to retrieve data, gain access to systems, or escalate access privileges. Sometimes it's a lot easier to access a system as a normal user, and then once you're already inside the network as a normal user, to try to escalate your privileges to an administrator or root user. Typical access attacks, password attacks, attempts to discover critical system passwords. Now we could be using phishing attacks, dictionary attacks, brute force attacks, network sniffing with Wireshark or something similar, or even social engineering tactics. Pass the hash. Has access to the user's machine and uses malware in order to gain access to the stored password hashes. And then the threat actor makes use of those hashes to authenticate with other remote servers. So often, in most cases in fact, the passwords are not exchanged across the network. Instead, the hashes are exchanged. So if you exchange a hash with me and it's a legitimate hash, I'm likely to think that you are the legitimate user. Trust exploitation, port redirection, man-in-the-middle attacks, IP, MAC address and DHCP spoofing. Trust exploitation attacks. So in this case, we've got a situation where, which way is this one going? System A trusts System B, where System B trusts everyone. So the goal, an attacker, wants to gain access to System A. So he's exploiting the trust relationship between the other systems. Port redirection, man-in-the-middle attacks, these are relatively straightforward to set up. In fact, I just so happen to have Kali running, so I had a little tilde in front of it. Etacap. There you go. Etacap, a multi-purpose sniffer content filter for man-in-the-middle attacks. And this is actually the piece of software that we used to do a man-in-the-middle attack on a Cisco switch in order to capture the packets on a voice over IP session, and then to string those packets together using Wireshark to rebuild the conversation. So if you've got a relatively good networking class and you want to do something a little bit sophisticated, this is a nice one. It's a nice piece of software to play with. But obviously you need to make sure that you get them to sign something first along the lines of, this is a cybersecurity course and you need to be legally responsible for what you're doing with the knowledge you are gaining. Okay, social engineering, actually one of the most powerful attack mechanisms. The famous threat actor, Black Hat, I suppose you would say, Kevin Mitnick, known as probably one of the world's most famous hackers. He was particularly good at social engineering. He could apparently talk anybody into giving away any amount of information. But there are many, many ways to do social engineering attacks. Speed-wise, we're running out of time a little bit, so this is just information that's in the chapter there. I won't bother reading through all of that. Phishing attacks, phishing being one of the bigger social engineering attacks. You do need to, before you take the chapter test for this particular chapter, you need to make sure you know the different types of phishing attacks. Okay, now we come to the weakest link, and unfortunately the weakest link is us. We're always the weakest link. People are typically the weakest link in any cybersecurity scenario. Your organizations must actively train their personnel, and we're not just talking about the people who run the network, we're talking about everybody in the organization should be trained to have a basic, at least a basic awareness of cybersecurity in order to create a security aware culture. Security is everybody's responsibility. Common network attacks, denial of service attacks. So these will typically result in some sort of interruption of service to users, devices or applications. This can be caused by overwhelming a target device with a large quantity of traffic, or by using maliciously formatted packets. Oh, here we go. Just so you have something else you might want to have a little look at. Back on the Kali machine. HPing 3. We do a man HPing 3, so as we look at the manual. HPing 3 sends almost arbitrary TCP/IP packets to network hosts. This is precisely a tool which can be used maliciously to do denial of service attacks. However, realistic purposes, the real reasons why a white hat activist might a white hat hacker may wish to use this would be for testing firewall rules, advanced port scanning, testing network performances using different protocols, etc., etc., etc. One of the most powerful things you can do with this is, let's see, HPing 3 -- flood. Now who do I want to ping? Actually, let's try something here. Let's just try something a little crazy, because we've got just a little bit of time left. I'm going to open up a Windows machine. Hopefully this will work. I don't think I'd be able to knock the machine completely off the network using HPing 3 off of a single host, but you can imagine if you had multiple hosts on your system all arbitrarily pinging another machine, it would be possible to do some form of denial of service attack, wouldn't it? Distributed denial of service attack. Okay, let's see, let's go into this Windows machine, hopefully. Yep, we're in. Excellent. Okay, so let's just try something here. There's nothing like playing with the software to work out how things work. We'll do an IP config. Now this is completely off the top of my head. It may or may not work. IP config, that's better. 192.168.50.68, so we're on 192.168.50.68. Just remember the 68. Okay, let's open something up on here. Do I have Chrome installed? Probably not. Yes, I do. Or do I? Or is that going to go to the internet to try to find Chrome? That's going to go to the internet to try to find Chrome. Let's very quickly install Chrome on here. Here we go. Hold on. Actually, I've already got Chrome installed now, haven't I? That's Chrome. Okay, so, boy, that was quick. Let's just bring something up on here. I just want to get this doing some form of download. Is that Chrome? I'm not sure that is Chrome, actually. What on earth is that? Well, it looks like it's Chrome. Oh, well, it doesn't matter. Here we go. It opened in the background. Right. Oof. Yeah, like I say, this is a little bit off the beaten path here, but it would be interesting to see if it will actually do what I think it might do. What I'm going to try to do is I'm going to try to, from the Linux machine, do a denial of service attack against the Windows machine, and I have absolutely no idea whether this is going to work. Thanks, Carl. I did in fact eventually realise what was going on the taskbar there. Yay, great job. The old grey cells, my friend, they're not what they used to be. Hold on. Oh, I didn't want to do that. It's already installed. Okay. Go away. Google installer. Right, that's it. Okie dokie. Right. YouTube. Let's just get something up here. Beam in Rhapsody. That'll do. Actually, I thought I'd actually type that into YouTube. Obviously, I didn't. Bohemian Rhapsody. I want something that's going to run for a little while. Let's do that one. There is a chance that I might get sound coming out of here. Possibly. Yeah, we have. Yeah. Okay, what I'm going to do, I'm going to drop the sound on there, and we can still see that the video's running. Okay, and then what we'll do is we'll open up hping 3, and what was that IP address of that Windows machine? 68. I'm hoping it was 68. 19. In fact, let's just check this one. If this is 58, I could be pretty sure the other one was 68. Yeah. Okay. So hping 3 minus flood 192.168.50.68. Okay. Is that still playing? Still playing. Okay. Well, obviously it didn't do enough flooding. My goodness me, they were young there, weren't they? Let's just stop that for a second. Well, that's sent 416,445 packets in not very many seconds. So what HPing3 is basically doing in flood mode is it just sends packets at a ridiculously high rate, not waiting for any replies. Wasn't enough to cause any problems though. I wonder whether if I do it with a couple of windows it might do it. I did actually do this once in class, but we had about 10 PCs in class, all pinging one PC in the back of a Cisco lab in our infamous Luton College, and it did actually knock that PC pretty much clean off the network. Okay, 68. I tell what I'm going to do. Just copy that. Right. I have no idea whether it's going to work. Oh, that's killed it. That appears to have killed it. Or has it? That might have just been a... Oh no, no, look at that. Yeah, that's getting... That's really struggling now. Look at that. It's going on and off, on and off, on and off. Possibly with a couple more, it might even stop it altogether. Now, if you do this from a few PCs, you can normally overwhelm the network card on a single machine, which is a very easy way to demonstrate how a denial of service is going to work. Okay. Yeah, I don't like it very much. It's struggling. Still playing, but it's struggling. Okay. Yeah, that's sending quite a lot of packets. Okay, so denial of service attack typically results in some form of interruption of services to users' devices or applications, caused by overwhelming a target device with large quantities of traffic. You've seen what happens there, or maliciously formatted packets. Okay, so a threat actor can forward packets containing errors that cannot be identified by the application, or forwards improperly formatted packets. And then we have the king of them all, which is your distributed denial of service attack. In a DDoS attack, you have handlers, you have agents or zombies, and you actually hit the victim from huge numbers of machines all at the same time. DDoS attack compromises many hosts, originates from multiple coordinated sources, and we have the terms zombies, a group of compromised hosts, i.e. agents. These are the hosts that run the malicious code, and they're referred to as bots or robots. Bots are the malware designed to infect the host, communicate with the handler system, command and control system. The bots can also log keystrokes, gather passwords, capture and analyze packets, or more. A botnet is simply a group of zombies infected by self-propagating malware, or in other words bots, controlled by the handlers. The handlers, referred to master command and control, refer to a master command and control server, the guy right at the very top here, which is controlling a group of zombies. Wow. It's a very, very dangerous type of attack. Generally directed against someone like Microsoft or a big bank or something. Somebody that for some reason or other has got a bit of a dislike to. So as an example DDoS attack, the threat actor builds or purchases a botnet of zombie hosts. The zombie computers will continue to scan and infect more targets to create more zombies. The more zombies the better, of course. And then when ready, the botmaster uses the handler system to make the botnet of zombies carry out the distributed denial of service attack against the chosen host. Yeah, extremely nasty. Buffer overflow attacks, the goal is to find a system memory related flaw and then exploit it. Oh, and of course what we want to do is, like every good black hat activist, we want to cover our tracks. So threat actors learned a long while ago that malware and attack methods are most effective when they're undetected. Okay, so some of the evasion methods used by threat actors include encryption and tunneling, resource exhaustion, traffic fragmentation, that makes it very hard to work out what the traffic's actually doing, protocol level misinterpretation, traffic substitution, traffic insertion, pivoting, and rootkits. And of course, new attack methods are being developed all the time, so network security personnel must be aware of the very latest attack methods in order to detect them. Okay, what I'm going to do is I'm going to stop those other H-pings because they're still going. I don't think it's actually causing my gigabit switch any issues, but I'll stop them anyway. There just isn't the bandwidth on these virtual machines for it to cause the gigabit switch any issues. And that is the last slide. That wasn't a particularly big chapter. However, next week, 4th of November, at the same time, we're going to be looking at Chapter 7, so we'll be looking at network attacks, and we'll be making a deeper look at the network attacks. So I hope you can join me for that one. Thanks very much again, and if you stayed with me for the last 3, well done. You deserve a drink. And I know I'm going to go and get myself one. Best wishes to everybody. Good luck with the rest of the course, and I'll see you all next week. Thank you.